Hey friends, welcome back to my kitchen. Today in this video, I am going to be doing something that I have wanted to do for quite some time now, and I'm finally taking the time to do it. It's one of those things that will save me time in the long run, but I just have to put the initial effort in at the beginning, and I thought it might be helpful for you as well, so I am bringing you along. I am going to be making a dry egg white bread mix. I don't know if you've noticed, but I make egg white bread quite a bit these days. And whenever I am about to do a recipe, I pull out of my pantry like 7 or 8 different containers of things to put together to make my egg white bread. And while I can't take all of those ingredients and put them into one mix because you have to mix them in a certain order for it to work, I can take, let's see, 5 of those ingredients and put them into a dry base mix. So that way I'm just pulling out maybe 3 or 4 different things rather than 7 or 8 different things. So I have a lot of recipes that have different variations of ingredients, but the nice thing about this dry mix that I'm making is that it's gonna work for several of those, because a lot of the different variations I do involve adding some kind of a fat powder at the end, and you can't put that in the mix at the beginning. So that's going to be one of the separate ingredients that you add at the end. So this dry mix will work if you use butter powder in your bread, or if you use yolk powder or whole egg powder. Any of those variations are gonna work with this dry mix. I also have in my mind that I wanna make a mix for my butter bun recipe that I put up a few days ago that a lot of you have said that you are loving, and a lot of you have said that it's gonna be your go-to recipe from now on. So I wanna do a mix for that as well, because I'm gonna be using it a lot from now on too. And it's gonna be similar to the mix that I'm making today, but it's not exactly the same, but I will give you that info in the video. And down in the description below, I'll have everything typed out so that you guys can figure out which mix you want to do and have all the measurements just right. I also want to mention here that the amount of the ingredients I'm using is an adjusted amount that I showed you in my butter powder experiment video. I was finding that when I was adding in all these different add-ins that I was getting too much batter for my pan. And so I just reduced the egg white powder and the water. For simplicity, I kept everything else the same, and it still worked out fine. So I'm doing that adjusted amount, and so it'll come out to 100 grams of the egg white powder per loaf. I just didn't want you guys to be confused if you went to my go-to bread recipe and you saw that it was 120 grams of the egg white powder per loaf. It's just that I adjusted the amount in order for it to fit in my pan better. So what I am going to do is I'm going to take a 1 kilogram bag of the bulk supplements egg white protein powder and turn that into a mix, and conveniently 1 kilogram equals 1,000 grams, and it's 100 grams of egg white protein powder per loaf, which means this mix that I'm mixing up will make 10 loaves of bread. Before we start mixing, I wanted to talk real quick about the containers that I use for my different ingredients. I've gotten asked many times about my containers, and so I thought I'd show them to you. They are the OXO brand Softworks pop containers, and they pop off like that. So when you put them on, you press it down, and then it makes it an airtight seal. Because I knew I was gonna be making this mix, I went ahead and picked up another set of the containers. I got these ones at Target. The first set I got a huge set from Costco a couple years ago, I think. And then every time I needed a new one, I would just get one at Target, because you can just buy individual ones. But they had this little set there when I went today that had 2 of the large ones. I thought I'd use one for my regular bread mix and one for my butter bun mix. And then it also came with these 2 little containers, which I can always find a use for. The other thing that I thought was cool in the set was it came with these little scoops. And I thought that would be perfect for my egg white bread mix, because I usually set my containers on my scale and just scoop out the amount that I need by weight rather than use a volume measurement. So just having a little scoop like this in there is perfect. So like I said, I got this set at Target, but I will also try to find it on Amazon, and if I can find it, I will link it down below. All right, now on to the good part. I am going to just put my whole 2.2 pound or 1 kg bag of egg white powder into my bowl. I got a big bowl. I want to make sure I have plenty of room to be able to stir this mix really, really well, because the last thing you want is like a big clump of salt or a big clump of cream of tartar getting in your bread. You want it to be really, really mixed up. Also very important that the bowl is 100% dry. You don't want to get any liquid in here that would mess it up. Then I'm going to add the salt, and the amount for 10 loaves of bread is 5 teaspoons, which you could up it to 6 teaspoons probably and have no issue, and that would be 2 tablespoons. But just to keep it as uniform as possible, I'm going to go ahead and just measure out the 5 teaspoons. You could also measure out 1 tablespoon plus 2 teaspoons if you'd like, but I have my teaspoon going, so it's no problem. Also for the cream of tartar, it is 5 teaspoons, so I'm going to do the same thing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now for the allulose, I do 1/4 of a cup per loaf. So that comes to 2.5 cups into the mix, or 360 grams. In one of my add-on experiment videos, I showed you inulin, and when I did the inulin, I did 2 tablespoons of inulin plus 2 tablespoons of allulose. So if you use that variation, then you would want to do 1.25 cup of the allulose and 1.25 cup of the inulin, and that would be 180 grams of each. But I am doing only allulose, so I am adding 360 grams of allulose to my mix. So I add arrowroot as my add-in for the bread that I usually make. My family really likes it, and that is a win for me to get my family to like it. So I'm definitely adding that in. I do 2 tablespoons per loaf, so that's 1.25 cups, and that comes to 160 grams. If you use xanthan gum as an add-in, usually it's such a small amount that it doesn't really affect the amount per loaf much. So you can just add that and then use the measurements that I give. But if you guys do like add different things like nutritional yeast or anything like that, different spices, what you can do is just make sure you weigh the amount of mix that you get at the end, and then you just divide that by 10, and that should be your amount per loaf. Just have my spatula, and I'm gonna spend some time just mixing this really well. I really wanna make sure everything is really mixed thoroughly. And try not to poof powder everywhere. All right, I'm gonna try to get this into the container very carefully. I washed my containers, tried to make sure I dried them 100%. Don't want any liquid in there. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Just gonna use my handy scoop to get a little bit. Might be able to pour it, we'll see. I just don't wanna make a giant mess. So if you want to make a butter bun base, good alliteration there, the only difference that you'd make to this base mix is you add 2.5 teaspoons of xanthan gum, and you cut the allulose in half. So instead of 360 grams, you just do 180 grams. And that is the base for the butter bun recipe. Of course, you would not add the butter powder to the mix, because that wouldn't allow it to whip up correctly. You'd still have to pull that out and add it in at the end. All right, that wasn't too painful. Got most of it without wasting any. Wonderful. Now I am going to label this. I just have some chalk labels that I got off of Amazon. I can link those down below. And then I got these chalk markers from a friend for Christmas, which was really fun. And if I can find them, I will link them below as well. Let's see. Should I use the rectangle ones or the pretty ones? such a hard decision. Let's see, what do I have on all of these? I just have I have different ones. Oh, no uniformity. I'll just use one of these. All right, so that is my egg white bread mix all ready to go. I will go ahead and make a loaf for you with it so you can see. But real quick, let me give you the measurements. So if you do it just like I did with the arrowroot, you're gonna use 154 grams of mix per loaf. So you do 1¼ cups of water, and then you put 154 grams of mix, and that comes to about 1½ cups. But as always, I recommend using weight instead of volume measuring. Weight is way more accurate. Measuring by volume, any kind of powder like this is inherently flawed because it compacts so much. Okay, now I'm gonna pull out my KitchenAid mixer and let's go ahead and make a loaf. I think I'm gonna do some butter powder added because that is also my family's favorite. That's what I found is arrowroot plus butter powder is a winner for my family, and my family is not all keto. I'm the only one in the family that eats keto or ketovore, and so if I can get them to enjoy high protein, low carb bread, I'm definitely gonna do it. First thing I'm gonna do is preheat the oven to 325. All right, watch this. I'm ready to make my bread. I got my 1, 2, 3 ingredients and I'm ready to go. I'm loving the counter space. You guys can't quite see it in the video, but the chickens are out and about. They have decided all of a sudden that they are free-range chickens now that they're all grown up. And they sneak out of the run and they run around and scratch up the ground and do all the chicken things. Thankfully, since they're bigger, we haven't had as much problem with hawks, so they can free range a little bit during the day. But it's always fun to look out the window and see a whole parade of chickens coming around. First thing I'm going to do is add my water to the bottom of the bowl. Then I'm going to add my 154 grams of egg white bread mix on top of the water. Now I'm going to start the mixer on low and slowly increase the speed to maximum, and then I will whip it on max speed for 5 minutes. While it is whipping, I am going to get my pan ready with the parchment paper. And I do have a video on how I put the parchment paper in the pan and get it to lay down, and I will link that up in the cards for you. Okay, now I'm going to add in my 1/4 cup of butter powder, and that is 24 grams. Beautiful. Just going to mix this up on low, 1 or 2, till it's incorporated but not whipped. I decided to go for 2 mini loaves instead of 1 big loaf because this is the size of bread that works well for my husband's breakfast sandwiches that he eats every morning, and this butter bread is going to be for him. Well, and actually my daughter, Autumn, who works at Subway, she has started to take some egg white bread with her to work and make her sandwich at lunchtime on the egg white bread instead of the Subway bread, because she was saying that she was getting tired of how the Subway bread was making her feel and she wanted to go a little bit lower carb, which made me very happy. All right, I'm going to pop these into the oven at 325 for about 33 to 35 minutes. If you do 1 big loaf, it usually takes 40 minutes, but I usually start checking the mini loaves around 32 to 33 minutes. Here are my mini butter loaves. They took exactly 33 minutes. I went ahead and got my butter bun base mixed up, so that is all ready to go. I feel super prepared. I hope this video was helpful for you guys. I will have all the measurements and everything down in the description below. I hope you are all doing great, and I will see you again in another video.